Just doing a video on x-coils. I see a lot of questions online and hoping this video can help answer some of the questions people have. Firstly, the changing of the cord and the chopping. Everyone seems to be quite concerned about this, and I'll give a little bit of an explanation of what's done, but basically it's only recommended for experienced people who know how to solder very well and work with very delicate wiring. Okay, there is an information sheet here. It has all the details, what to do, how to do it, etc. Plugs, soldering, tips. One in particular is that the wires are individually lacquered, even though they are so fine, and it is very difficult to solder them. And yeah, it's just something that someone who's been very experienced in soldering will understand. Someone who hasn't may struggle with. Anyway, I'll have a link to this on my website or below in the comments. So just check that out. You can download it and read it. Again, I highly recommend you do not do this by yourself, and get someone who is experienced in doing them to make up your patch lead. Now, the patch lead basically is a short lead with a couple of plugs, or a plug and socket basically on it. It is always recommended to stiffen the lead so there's no movement with dual wall heat shrink tube, and you can get this from places like JCar, etc. The stuff you get online from eBay tends to be a bit dodgy, doesn't have the proper glue covering on the inside, so I'd avoid that. After changing your lead, you do get to use your Minelab 14-inch coil with the new adapter on it. So you can continue using your coil, you can just swap it at any time you like back to normal, but you need to have that patch lead in place. Now, I've done things a bit different on mine. I run a patch lead that's long with the connection at the lower part of the shaft down here. The reason for that is, in the field I like to change my coils regularly, and all I have to do is slip off this bottom section and change coils and slip on the bottom section, done. Whereas with the standard patch lead, which is all the way up in there, you have to basically disassemble all the shaft to thread through the patch lead every time you want to change a coil. Now, that is the recommended way. That is how x-coils recommend it. That's how users in Australia have experienced the best way to use it. For me, I copied a guy in America who decided to do it this way. Now, it does become more sensitive with lead movement if you're going to have the longer lead and have your connection lower. It does not affect the operation of the coil if you have the cord set up correctly, which means when you bump something, if that cord, the connector, where the connector is, wobbles, then it'll detect that as a target. If you have, say, a sponge around it, or a something to stop it moving, anti-vibration disc, whatever, however you do it, even stuffing foam in there or whatever, it holds that connector firm and you do not get the bump sensitivity. Also, when you're running your x-coils, one thing I have noticed is to regularly check the lead connectors. I have had mine come loose a couple of times, causing all sorts of blanking out, coil overload and weird sort of things. Simply tightening up the connector fixed it all, and there was no damage done to the detector. Okay, so that there is your old Minelab lead. So that's been chopped off and no longer needed. Over here, whenever I get a new x-coil, I always purchase the Minelab lower shaft. You've seen there. Because the way I do mine, I want to have it for a quick change, so I have the lead there. That basically connects on, and then looks like that. You can see on my cords I have the plug stiffened with, that's an original cord, with extra heat shrink tubing, and it makes for a very firm and solid lead. You can't actually bend it easy. Now this coil here, that is a standard lead on this coil, and that's how they recommend you run it. So that's an original x-coil with an original lead that goes up to the short patch leads that get made up. So as you can see, it goes all the way up the shaft and isn't quick for replacing, but obviously does its job. Doesn't matter if the cord moves around, there's no connector in there, so no target identification from the connector moving like I have on mine. So that's basically the ins and outs of it. We'll move on to the detector itself and show you how that's all set up. I'll just put the video down.